Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Transnet says it's able to unlock some 23 million tonnes of coal a year from South Africa's emerging Waterberg coalfield. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer joins me in studio to tell us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Now, Transnet GM Divyesh Kalan mentioned at the McCloskey Coal Conference this week that there was a timeline for unlocking the coal in the Waterberg. Can you elaborate on that statement?
Well, we've been waiting so long now for some sort of logistical plan for the Waterberg coal reserve. You know, we've had the traditional Woodbank coal fields and the Mpumalanga coal fields. They are depleting. That's where all our power stations are. But we've also got one existing power station in Limpopo, you know, close to on the Waterberg coal field, and we've got another being built there, and that is where the coal future lies. That's the emerging coal field that is going to keep the lights on for South Africa in the future. But there was a logistical vacuum. People didn't know how they were going to get this coal to market, because we've got the Richards Bay coal terminal there with the 91 million tonne capacity. Even the existing rail has been unable to match that 91. Hopefully, you know, that they will come up with solutions, but they're always in the future, of course. And, you know, we've got to watch out for the cyclical nature of coal. Coal can be up at a nice price, and then it can fall, as we've seen in the past. And just the indications coming out of the McCloskey Coal Conference at the moment is that thermal coal that we're talking about now, you know, the coal that is burnt to create the electricity, to put the lights on, etc. It seems that there's an anomalous situation where there is a very large oversupply of this in the world at the moment. And yet, when you talk to the South Africans, there's a huge inland shortage. So there are quite a few questions to be asked about coal. You know, coal is a life and death issue for South Africa. But I think we're playing fast and loose with it. We still haven't got a proper policy on coal. And as this conference was told, South Africans are more dependent on coal than any other country in the world. You know, the 93% dependence is a life and death dependence. And the way we're dealing with this coal gives me the feeling that we're not taking it seriously enough, you know, because Eskom is starting to pull its hair out because, you know, there is this incentive for people to export the coal. Maybe now with this oversupply, we'll see people turning inward again and supplying the inward market with greater alacrity. But all the inland traders that I spoke to, you know, when I put up my headlines that there's a horrific oversupply, it came online, and they came rushing to my laptop and saying, but where's this coal? So we're really talking about an outside situation where the export coal seems to be in huge oversupply. It's going to have an impact on South Africa. I was also rather concerned that the pricing of the physical coal and what they call financial coal, there's a gap between the two. And, you know, we saw what happened in the United States when there was a securitization of property assets that were really being overvalued. That led to the last global meltdown. You know, we're still suffering from that mismatch. Now, there seems to be a situation in coal pricing that's a bit worrying, because the way the financial traders are using coal, it seems to not be matching the physical coal. So you get a sort of a lower quality physical coal still being priced at a higher quality. And you wonder if there isn't some sort of adjustment that's going to happen that could shake the market.
Now, what benefit do you think there will be in diverting general freight through the new Swazi link that's expected to be built?
You see, at last Transnet is coming to the party. It's a bit of a pity because, you know, they've missed the boat on some of the very big opportunities that we had in coal, and obviously these will arise again, so you need to put that infrastructure in. But it is a Johnny-come-lately type thing, but in coming late, they are putting a good foot forward at the moment. And they are taking decisions, which is wonderful. And because there is such an interruption of our coal line, we've had this coal line to Richards Bay, which has been a very important line. It's interrupted by general freight. instead of this being a dedicated line like you do have with the iron ore line going down to Cape Town, you have coal going on it, but you also have general freight going on it, and this slows down things and creates schedule problems. So the Swazi link is to divert that general freight through Swaziland. So South Africans and the Swazis have cooperated quite well to put this link in so that the general freight can make use of that line, while the coal line is then becoming more dedicated to coal. And in that way, they're convinced that they can match the port capacity. There's always been a mismatch. You've got the private sector owned and operated port, and the state owned and operated rail, and never the twain will meet, unfortunately, which has damaged the economy of South Africa. At last, the state-owned enterprise is coming to the party, but all of a sudden, you see Transnet complaining and saying, "But where's the coal, guys?" So that's how the market changes. It's a difficult situation, but I think if the state is going to play in this game, it needs to make sure the capacity is there. Otherwise, I think if it's too hot to be in the kitchen, they must get out of it. You find in other countries where the rail is owned by the private sector, they make sure there's a match between the capacity, the mining, the digging the coal out, putting it on the rail line, and the port. There's a bit of a match-up. We have had this mismatch. So it's damaged the economy of the country, where you have the private sector saying, look, we can put through 91 million tonnes, and the state sector saying, but we can only get 60 million tonnes on rail, and the loss of opportunity, the loss of revenue there has been colossal. Now you have the state rail saying, hey, look, we've got a lot of capacity, and you can see a little bit of a hesitancy in the ports because there are changes in the demand patterns for export coal. So it's a bit of a worrying situation. But we need to bite the bullet in South Africa and make sure that capacity is there, so that the next time there is the coal cycle, we will be ready to make use of it fully.
Now, speaking of the state being involved in the rail line, how will they pay for that? Yeah,
you see now that's another issue, the funding issue. The state, again, can it fund what is needed? Now, it has got a balance sheet that it can use, and it will use that balance sheet to the full. This is a state-owned enterprise. It's got a lot of its own revenue sources. It can use its balance sheet to finance and fund the Waterberg addition, plus all the other rail they need. But there comes to a limit. It comes to a situation where what are you going to do? And is there going to be a gap? Is there going to be a shortfall? Well, people anticipate a gap and a shortfall in the funding. And that's why the state-owned enterprise, Transnet, has been saying for quite a long time that it's looking to what they call PSP, it's public sector participation. It's really private sector participation. Of course, that might irk the unions. So, they give it an acronym which sounds like a public sector participation, which means that the private sector participates within the public sector. And where there is a gap, so where they have a funding gap, they then look to the private sector to say, okay, you can participate in this, you can help us fund it. Perhaps you can buy some of your own wagons, etc., and these will be your wagons, and you can put them on our line. And there's a cooperative element there. But of course, the eye always has to be kept on the unions, because the unions don't like this sort of thing. That they want full state ownership. This gives them a comfort. But you can see that the state isn't able to come to the party fully always, and they're already anticipating that the state in this rail funding won't be able to come to the party fully. They can foresee that, and so we will have this model that we've had in South Africa for some time now, called the public-private partnership. That's called PPP. Well, Transnet has created its own acronym now, but it's a similar thing. It's what they call the PSP. It is opening the way for private sector participation. That is normally a good thing, because these people are in the business, they're there, they know what is needed, and they can make sure that that they make full use of something that they've put their funds into it. But there is a situation where there are a lot of smaller coal miners coming up now, and you know, if the Transnet is going to adopt these contracts of you know, take or pay, I think some of the smaller operators are going to feel the pinch. That's definitely what they're going to do with the new Waterberg link. You know, it will be a take or pay. So in other words, you know, Exora, which is a big coal miner out here in the Waterberg, other coal miners also looking there, they will have to sign a contract with the state-owned Transnet freight rail. And in this contract it will say that Transnet will take you know, tons of coal for you a year, certain tons. But if you haven't got that coal
you still pay
to
for it.
put on a wagon, you're still going to have to pay for it. So you'll need, you know, mining companies that are doing their calculations very well, and that they've also got muscle in that they're able to take any knock in that regard. Whether the smaller operator is going to be able to take that knock is a different story. But of course the smaller operators are also more flexible. You know, they can offer their coal to a bigger player who's already signed that contract, so there are ways out of that. But in a way, the fragmentation of South Africa's coal industry does create those sort of problems which they're going to have to deal with. I think having the mixture of the state ownership and the private sector ownership might be the way to go, because you see in Australia, for instance, on the iron ore lines, you know, the moment the smaller players want to get onto the line, the bigger players say, hang on, this rail belongs to me. And of course that is also bad. You know, you want the rail to be accessed by all people.
No monopolies.
Yes, so you know, the fact that the state is involved in our rail is probably going to be a big plus, because then those smaller guys can see the light of day. Whereas I think in Australia they've had to bring in new legislation to say, hey, let the little guys on. And there's always a little bit of tension between the two of them. So perhaps we have got the right formula. I think maybe this PSP formula is the right formula. And we do see that, you know, the iron ore line to Saldanha Bay, there's there's an improvement there. You don't have complaints. You know, things are happening. The only people who are worried now are the manganese producers. You know, are they going to get a look in? But it seems that the government has made a firm decision that the manganese will go to Port Elizabeth. And, you know, rightly or wrongly, they're saying it's going to go to Port Elizabeth. People who are close to it, you know, are whispering in your ear wrongly, because they feel that dedicated line to Saldanha with a few more loops, you know, can cope with manganese going on there. Obviously, there'll have to be a separate terminal situation. The two can't mix, you know, the iron ore and the manganese. But of course, traditionally, for years now, our manganese has gone to Port Elizabeth. And you know, the King's Beach, there was always a bit of a problem there. You'd go and swim on the King's Beach and you'd look across and see this green dust. I mean, not green, it's a reddish dust from the manganese. Now that is going to go to the Kucha port. That is the new idea, that you take it away from the tourist beach and you put it into Kucha with a dedicated line there. So it seems like that's definitely the plan. And Transnet seem determined. But one hopes that, you know, politics haven't played the role. People whisper in your ear that, you know, Saldanha, because it is no longer an ANC municipal authority, people have suddenly switched because it's turned to the DA. And now they want to go to Port Elizabeth, where, you know, the ANC nearly lost control of Port Elizabeth. It was, you know, they came within a hair's breadth of losing control, and they feel they must put more energy into. I hope that is not the basis. You know, I hope that there is a genuine reason for wanting to divert, because I don't think they should allow politics to play. And South Africa's got to be first, not particular parties. But of course, throughout South Africa's history, we've always seen the influence of the ruling party, and I hope we're not seeing it again. But as far as the coal line goes, you do get the impression, you know, from Transnet and Divyesh Kalan, that these fellas are doing quite well. They're restoring credibility in the rail, and I think that's what the international community picked up at this McCloskey conference, that you know, Transnet is showing a lot of professionalism. So that is what is needed for South Africa.
Well, we hope it all goes very well. Thank you for your comment, Martin.
I hope so too.
Thank you. That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.